Welcome back, everyone. With school and work back in session means more people are, of course, using transit. But the reality is transit revenue is not keeping pace. Earlier this month, the ETS, for example, was informed by Council to find $10 million within its existing budget this year to make up for the red ink. The other option was to raise fares, which Council rejected. Joining us now is David Cooper, the founder of Leading Mobility, which is a transit planning firm. David, good morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, and it's great to be here before my friend Aaron, who's coming up next.
Yeah, so we only got 4 minutes here. We could speak about this for half an hour, but let's get to it. You recently co-authored a national report, and you used some pretty concerning language. You said that public transit is headed towards a downward spiral. We're not just talking about Edmonton, we're talking nationally here.
So we've had a challenge with the transit operating funding model across Canada. And cities like Edmonton, the only two ways we fund transit is through property tax and through transit fares. And there was a conversation at Council last week about how do we solve this $10 million funding problem. Just to give a perspective, $10 million is about 50 buses on the road. And what we're having is some of the strongest ridership recovery across the country. But when you only have two tools and fares only pays 36% of the operating costs, and transit's the second biggest budget line item, it's $1.2 million a day to run transit service here in the city. We need to find different ways to actually fund the day-to-day service so that Edmontonians can rely on it and that we have a sustainable way to provide it.
So let's talk about what some of those ideas are. You talked about, vehicle levies or something called benefit taxes. Could you expand upon that?
So what we did was we looked at different tools that are being used across the country and also in the States, and we're not naive. People don't like new taxes, people don't like new fees, and what we want to really tie to is if we're going to grow transit or even solve the current issue, we have Calgary's having a transit funding challenge, Vancouver has declared a crisis on this, same thing in Ottawa and Montreal. We need different ways to fund transit, and one of the things that we saw in the prairie cities like Edmonton is that there's potential opportunities for things like a vehicle levy. There's opportunities for off-street parking. So this is looking at providing revenues through the different kind of surface parking that you may see across city and making that money go towards transit. This is actually done in Vancouver. This is done in Montreal. Halifax actually has more diverse tools to fund transit through a benefit area tax where you pay a little bit more on your property tax when you have access to the service. But the two tools we have right now is really problematic, and we keep kind of walking into this budget crunch every year.
So, okay, I want to, like in New York, for example, they were going to bring in congestion pricing. The governor there was like, no, that's not going to happen. Shortly after said, yes, she supported it. So this is a political issue. So if even in a place like New York, they can't get these new sources of revenue, how can a place like Edmonton convince the public that this is a good idea?
So what happened in New York was extremely unfortunate. They actually put the infrastructure in, they got the federal approvals, the state approvals to do this, and they pulled the 11th hour because of political pressure. It wasn't because they didn't want to do it. And now they're in a crunch where it's like they have a multi-billion-dollar shortfall for fixing the subway system that is over 100 years old and also expanding it. And now they're scrambling to find a way. And I think what the issue we have here is that we scramble every year just to deal with the operating. We got emergency operating funding during the front end of the pandemic. Cities have been raiding their reserves, which is not sustainable. And what we're trying to do is just to maintain the service that we have 30,000 people a year move to this region.
Right.
And we need transit for them. We can't even grow the service we have, let alone fund today's service. And that's why we wanted to look at this in this national report.
But politically, how do you convince the overall general public that vehicle levies or any other kind of ways to increase revenue for transit, which means taking money from the people, is a good idea?
So when I worked at TransLink, we are required by legislation to do an investment plan, and we can't expand service unless we show people how we are actually going to pay for it. And one of the things that we did, which was quite successful, is we said, we will add 100 buses to the streets of Metro Vancouver with additional service if you provide us the additional revenue tools, which was an increase in gas tax, which they have, we don't have here. And we flooded the system. And people said, this is great. We're solving our overcrowding, or we're solving some of our congestion issues. We want more transit. One of the things that we're hearing right now is people don't want cuts. I don't actually hear from anyone, even across the political spectrum, saying they want to cut service, but we need to have an honest conversation about how we fund it. We've been expanding our services, which has been great. We've got lots of funding from the province and the federal government on that, but we also need ways to fund even what's coming next on that, and this includes expansion to our LRT system, things like that.
Quickly here, safety is a big perception, a big issue. How can you convince people who are in their cars to convert to transit when the perception of safety is still front and center?
The three things transit needs to be is clean, safe, and reliable. And I'm also been working on the transit safety, as you know, and we've seen improvements on that through additional resourcing, more frontline staff, more outreach supports, more peace officers, things like that. But the number one thing that actually solves safety is more people on the system. You're less likely to have an incident when it comes to crime or safety it's based on opportunity, and the more people you have there, the less ability that you have to have those particular incidents. But it's something that everyone's laser focused, including myself, on, because we need to also address that in addition to the operating funding challenges we have.
Bit of a chicken and egg scenario.
Yes.
We can't solve it in 4 minutes. David, though, thank you so much for coming in to talk about this very important issue.
Thanks for having me.